Ryan.
Good morning, Rachel.
How are you?
I'm very well. Do you take any medications by any chance, Rachel?
I do.
Oh, that's good. Do you have any problems with your heart that we should know about?
No, but that is something that I am aware of because my mum has heart issues.
Do you think the truth is fluid? Rachel's biting her lip, saying, not wanting to say yes or no, because once you go down that road, you get destroyed by facts and logic. So, Rachel, I'm actually doing pretty well. I'm excited. We've got a very challenging episode of Babylon 5 to discuss today, and we're doing it through what prism? What point of view are we looking at this?
Retrospective. Recap, so spoilers.
Yeah, if you haven't seen Intersections in Real Time, you're a fool, and we're going to have to punish you. I'm just saying it. But we're actually called YumYumPodcast because of an amazing line of dialogue. Oh, what a line of dialogue it is from Star Trek Discovery, a series we have talked about on this podcast before, and hopefully will again. Did you know it's ending soon, Rachel? They said no more Star Trek Discovery, no more. And so that means one day we can officially end the Star Trek Discovery conversations, but we're talking about Babylon 5, and we aren't alone, are we?
No, we are not. You, Ryan, have more than one podcast.
It is true. I have 2 podcasts. They breed, these podcasts. If I feed them after midnight, there's going to be a lot of problems. I've already spilled some water on the podcasts, and now, oh no, I better not feed this guy over here after midnight, or else things can go wrong.
Yeah, never feed a Bartek after midnight. And a specific Bartek is our guest for today.
Well, I couldn't really hear what you guys were saying because of all the applause after you said my name. Calm down, applause that's added in post-production. Calm down. I need to get my words in.
Oh, Bartek, in our film podcast, Spit and Posh Presents, you keep asking me to edit things in for you, and I keep saying, editing Ryan isn't doing that. Well, guess what editing Ryan isn't doing for Yum Yum? Not adding them, because of course I'll add a thunderous round of applause after your name is said
Polite applause, but a lot of it.
Okay, like it's the same one but doubled up, but with a second delay from the other one.
And one of them has an echo.
Sure, why not? Bartek, hello, how are you doing?
Good. It's 2:30 here, but I have to say good morning because I don't want to contradict you.
Good morning. It's actually supper time.
Hey, we don't know what time people are listening to this.
It could be morning when they're listening to this.
But they know what time we're recording because I said so.
Ah, Bartek gave away our secrets.
They don't know if you're telling the truth or not.
That's true, and Ryan could put a lot of sound effects over me saying what time it is.
I just need to press my button that electroshocks Bartek and then just say to him, never contradict me on the podcast. That was just Bartek excited to talk about this episode
That was
of B5.
That was me mashing triangle.
So, could you tell us a bit about yourself and the podcast you and I host?
Sure, and I'm glad to know you were feeding it because I forgot. So we do a podcast called Spit and Polish Presents, likingly because we are always spitting and we both happen to be Polish. I almost messed up the catchphrase.
Don't do that.
Don't do that. Yeah, I didn't want to contradict you from when you say it correctly. And the main show we do is called Pictures Powwow, our weekly show where we review a film that has come recommended from either me, you, or listening people.
When I ask a question, you will respond at once. You will not hesitate, you will not consider, you will not lie. Cooperation will be rewarded. Resistance will be punished. Do you understand?
I want to know who in Intersections in Real Time had Yum Yum energy. Rachel, who do you think? We didn't have many people to choose from, but there are people here nonetheless that could have licked their lips sexily, thrown their hair back or head, because some characters don't have hair in this, or very little hair, and say yum yum in a breathy, sexy voice. Who had that potential for you, Rachel?
The Drazi, when he's wearing the executioner hood.
Yeah, that's a fantastic call out. I also circled I was going to say, I also circled the Drazi, but if Rachel said the interrogator, I would have also said, I also circled him down. But my actual answer is our boy, Sheridan. Sheridan doesn't get the yum energy enough on this show because he's very straight-laced. But when he ate that sandwich with defiance, I wanted him to lick his lips and say yum yum in a sexy tone of voice. Oh, he was just teetering on that edge. But Bartek, who had it for you?
So this is a really difficult one because, as you said, we've only really got 3 major characters and some extras, and 2 of the characters have a very notable scene where they eat something, and their reactions are not yum yum. One of them is, this is really excellent corned beef.
Wiping his mouth.
And the other one, Sheridan, is just grunting the whole time. So it's a case of like, yeah, maybe they have the energy, but their literal words are, this is some really excellent corned beef, and so I almost kind of want to give it to the Drazi just because, like, he's the mystery.
I thought you were... Oh, go on.
I think the only true answer we can say is that it is both no one and everyone, because the answer, much like the truth, is something that is all a matter of perspective. In one case, you might have it that, no one would say it, but simply twist the perspective around and suddenly everyone has yum yum energy.
If JMS wrote a 45-minute long script of people just saying yum yum in different tones of voice, I would have said this episode was brave. I thought, honestly, I knew you were gonna do some twisty-turny answer like that, but I wrote in my notes that Bartek's suggestion will be the random voiceover of that minister reading out the last rites in a very weird tone of voice. He said those lines very weirdly. It almost took me out of the episode because it's very, very serious. And then this guy does the last rites and it's in this, I can't even replicate the voice. It's so arched and strange. I couldn't pick his accent. I was like, is this an American accent? Is this an Australian accent? Is this an English accent? The guy was all over the shop.
This is a really, artsy episode in like a different way to like the Stephen First directed ones. Very artsy.
You have the DVD summary for Intersections in Real Time, which is episode 18 of season 4. Mm-hmm. And you have not read this DVD description.
I've read like the first word, but then I stopped.
And then you stopped because you want to have it fresh, come out of your mouth fresh. So let's hear a fresh, organic read of Intersections in Real Time.
Sure. So season 4, episode 18, Intersections in Real Time. Sheridan is alone and vulnerable. ... And a simple signature will set him free. An Earth Force Inquisitor draws from his bag of cruel tricks and mind games to coerce the captain into a confession of treason.
He does have a bag. That is factual. He does, in fact, have a bag of tricks. Now, history and relationship-wise with this, mine is very simple. My immediate reaction is the same every time, so it has not changed. Which, and this is in a good way, which is, I get a big smile on my face and I say out loud, I can't believe they're doing this. But in a way where there's satisfaction, because narratively speaking, this is the point where Sheridan is at his lowest. He's been betrayed, he's been captured, and most of the time you would get the interrogation. But it would be a part of the episode, not the whole episode. And I have always just been so thrilled to bits that they actually did it. They actually just said, no, we're not cutting away. We're not going anywhere. This is the episode.
Yeah, it's always one where I'm like, wait, this is the whole episode, isn't it? Like, I always think, oh, well, it can't be, right? They don't do this. And then they do. And it's great. And I love it.
It's a bottle episode.
Mm-hmm.
It's a play. It's just a duologue for the most part. You have other bodies come in to help make function happen, but really it's a duologue, and at the most you get a trio at one point. But yeah, Bartek, for you, you've said this is one of your favorite, if not favorite, episodes of B5. So walk us through a bit of your experience having watched this. And this would have been your second time watching it, right?
Yes, the only episodes I've ever rewatched properly are the ones that I've done for this podcast, which has been the interrogation episodes of every season. And I had made the point since my first appearance here that, like, yeah, there are... I was pointing out 3, but yeah, season 3 also had one. There are all these different types of interrogation episodes that all do it slightly differently. And it really builds up to this one here, which is my favorite one, of the whole show, where the first episode we had that I was on was And the Sky Full of Stars, where the interrogator, it was like a team of 2 people who are using this science fiction technology to actually get inside a brain, and like work with some psychological stuff there. They're not necessarily the most talented at interrogation, but they latch onto some opportunities. Then season 2, which this episode had a callback to even, we had Sebastian, who does have a bit more psychology and like a threatening tone and some gadgets to help him along. He has a far more naturally menacing way of doing it. But there is very much a thing of like, yeah, you can leave at any time. And the goal of it is very kind of abstract because, he's working for the Vorlons. We have a self-interrogation in season 3, which is basically, the character being interrogated is, facing themselves, basically facing their truth. They can no longer run away because it's themselves doing it. And then this one, in a lot of ways, it just has the most simple elements, but the context around all of it just leads to this incredibly oppressive and psychological experience where it's a dark room. The person doing the interrogation is, like in any other context, like the most normal pencil-pushing office worker you could ever have. And the amount of cluelessness that our interrogation subject Sheridan has in this episode is just off the charts. It's like we've been building up for 3 and a bit seasons now of Earth Force is, you got all the analogies to like the Nazis, Star Wars stuff. They're an oppressive force. They use violence and cruelty. And it's just really bizarre to see that they have something so calculated and dark and otherworldly feeling at their disposal,
and it's simple.
And
that's the thing.
And it's incredibly simple.
They're not using the Psy-Core. They're just using a guy and words and some minor physical stuff from time to time. But like a lot of this episode is just talking and talking. And to just go off your point of Sebastian, which does get a direct call out here. A difference too is the interrogator in the other ones. Whether it is And the Sky Full of Stars, The Inquisitor, and even to an extent the Franklin one, they all have a deeply like personal thing that they're going through themselves. Like we know what their thing is about by the end of the episode. Like Sebastian, he has a sadistic pleasure in hurting people. Like a part of the danger in that one is Sebastian is a serial killer and he's going to do this to kill you because that gets him off. Yeah,
he's not as impartial as he says he is.
Well, the interrogator here, I mean, we only get his name because the credits give him a name.
Same with Knight 2, yeah.
Same with Knight 2. He doesn't get a name either. But this guy, he comes across like, and he even says it like, he has no investment. There is no malice. And so it is just another step in what you're going through with us about these interrogations and how they change and evolve. And some of the things are recurring beats and themes. But this particular one, what makes him like scary is he is so mild-mannered, yet he's saying and doing horrific things, but there's no pleasure in it. Like he doesn't communicate any pleasure in this or any real like yearning desire. Like with Knight 2, he became invested in Sinclair's story. Like he became actively excited to help him figure it out. While the interrogator here, William, for him, it very much is, I would really have liked if you didn't do that. I really wish you didn't do that. The most emotional he gets is to help wind Sheridan up.
I have no control over what will happen next. It's out of my hands.
I brought it up already, like this mysterious, psychological, dark room. Like the fact that the antagonists in the show have something like this at their disposal, the whole psychological torture they do towards Sheridan, which again goes back to very simple kind of things going on. The words that our interrogator says, like, I never lie, and it ends up being true. Like, it's always just like lying by omission, if anything. Like, oh yeah, I ate this. And there's poison in it, but I'm immune to the poison, so... Yeah.
I didn't tell you that. Or he makes contradictions. But it's not necessarily a lie. Sheridan points it out near the very end. It's like, well, you said truth is fluid. But you also said that the indeterminate truth is this. So, well, which is it?
Yeah. And yeah, you also do have that sort of...
It's lunch somewhere.
It's lunch somewhere, yeah. Technically, Sheridan didn't agree. Right. He said an objective truth. So, but yeah, the thing about like whether you're trusting him, because yeah, he has this very, look, I don't actually have a stake in this. These are the people that do. He keeps reinforcing this idea, and for most of it, you do get this sense of like, okay, he is kind of just doing his job. But then you have the moments like when he's yelling, or the moments towards the end where he's like being really forceful about it. And it's like, okay, do you actually have a stake here? And there is this sort of implication like, okay, maybe something is going to happen to him, because he does mention a few times that like, you're actually safer than I am. They need you. They don't need me. I'm expendable. And I remember, I think it was when he was getting in his face there in that last interaction, like the camera was like really kind of shaky as it was following him and really jarring. And there was this one moment where he was like moving away from his table to Sheridan's side. He gets near Sheridan and he kind of moves back for a second, then moves forward. And it like played mind tricks on me. It's like, whoa, he's like shrinking and then growing or something's going on there. And it was like this really intense moment where I really felt like I was in Sheridan's shoes, because I guess, yeah, that janky movement would have been his perspective.
There's so many wonderful pieces of blocking and lighting. That's the thing to really commend about this episode is the darkness.
That's also what adds to the feeling of it being like a play, is that you're always very aware that it's a set and that it's controlled. But that is on purpose from the show, because that's what Sheridan feels like. He feels like he's a player on a stage being manipulated and controlled, because they want him to feel that way. They want him to feel the pressure, the isolation. And all of these elements are working visually to reinforce that for him in the setting, but also for the audience.
Brilliant pieces of direction to what you're saying is the set is very bare bones, concrete floor, black walls, a door that opens out to a little corridor that you just see some lights just reflect on the floor when they turn them on. And the most character the room has, it has a drain in the center of the floor. Like, that's it. Like,
oh yeah, the opening shot. You see it.
And you see it throughout the episode, and it's like
when I first saw that shot, I thought that was like a shot of like a spaceship with like the light and like the horizon. I'm like, oh no, that's the ground. That's a drain.
That's just a drain. That's probably where he had to puke his guts up into, right? There's no toilet in there.
They certainly use that to help clean up. Yeah,
and
mop it in there.
It's to further go through Rachel's point of just Sheridan in a way is being in this play. You see him try and go against the script, and every time he does, you see how no Sheridan, you're playing in exactly how we want. Yeah, keep eating that sandwich. You're eating it defiantly, thinking, I've got him. No,
it could use more mustard. Oh, do you think it could use more poison?
And I mean, the darkness is beautifully captured visually, because you can always see what's happening, but at the same time, it it really makes you uneasy, and that oppressive quality that's already present in the idea of this story, which is just you are watching Sheridan get tortured for 45 minutes. That's already an arresting idea, but to then have it be brought to life with this brute force simplicity. Here's a chair, here's a table, here's a guy with some glasses. And the fact that this guy keeps fiddling with his glasses and looking at them and the light shines through onto his eye and it makes you uneasy.
It takes forever for him to finish with his briefcase, and sometimes he has to step out of the room to like get one thing he forgot.
Yeah. And it's very mannered. There's no aggressive qualities to it in how it's presented, and I just really love those shadows. And just he's wearing a black suit, this interrogator, against a black background, and yet there's so much definition and contrast and highlights and lowlights and all of that where you can tell everything. Nothing is bleeding into one another too much, but just enough to make you unsure, because there are those scenes, those intense close-ups on this interrogator's face where he just looks like a floating head.
Yeah.
Just talking at Sheridan. Makes him feel inhuman, even though we're right up close to a human face.
Like in the book of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, they make a point of like, you remember in the movie all of the orderlies were black people?
Yes.
And they were wearing white uniforms. They did that in the book specifically because like the walls are as white as their uniforms, so they look like floating heads.
Now you're being evasive.
It's better than being dishonest.
Really? You said it was lunchtime, even though you knew almost certainly that it was not. You said that you've never been influenced by other people, and you and I both know that's impossible. I, however, have spoken the utter and unvarnished truth from the moment I came through that door. Now, which one of us is being dishonest?
Now, Rachel, did you know that this is the 84th episode of the show?
No.
Yeah. Isn't that cool? Like, the one that's most 1984-esque is the 84th episode of the show.
Yeah, that is cool.
Yeah, I don't know if that was intentional or if it just landed like that, but it's a neat thing to know nonetheless.
We have to discount the gathering, though.
Yes, well, that's episode 0.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But another thing to point out when it comes to this episode is it's the only episode of Babylon 5 without Babylon 5 in it. It never turns up. We never go to it. We never get it. Outside of obviously the intro credits, we never go to Babylon 5. It's the only time in the show and all the movies, I'm pretty sure as well, where we don't have that be a thing.
No, like we get the flashback of him watching Ivanova, who is on Babylon 5. That's the closest we get.
And of course, Rachel, you've just said it. Flashbacks. We only get flashbacks to help bring in the other cast members. Delenn appears as a vision to him a couple of times, but every other cast member is either in flashback form or not at all. Not at all. This is the only episode where, like, you only, like, with the least amount of cast members in it.
The only one giving you voice work is, Sheridan.
Isn't that just something to commend as well? We've got like 110 episodes of the show with a large ensemble of characters, and that means you have to juggle things. Like, you have to tend to things all the time. You have to make sure we're not running low on Franklin and where he's at, or we got to make sure that Londo is being, like, we're touching base with Londo.
We haven't seen Jakar in ages.
We haven't seen Jakar in a while, but yet we can still have the ability to just say, no. Only Sheridan. We'll have Delenn. She doesn't speak. Just have her there. And that's it.
I remember when I first started the show and I was telling you, like, oh yeah, the opening credits had all these characters, but like not all of them are in every episode. So, and I was making like a minorly bitchy point about that. And here I am now. My favorite episode's the one where there's only really one main cast member in it.
Let's talk about the methods of torture and interrogation used here. Now, Rachel, we're going through this on our rewatch, so we all are aware of how this is a talky episode. This is an episode that
so like it's pretty much all dialogue.
There is use of physical torture. He poisons Sheridan with a sandwich. He electroshocks him. He sends people in to grab him and toss him around. But all of that is very, very, secondary to the main torture, which is very psychological and is about that dialogue, is about that wordplay and the manipulation of words and trying to coerce people to give up a little bit at a time. And I just want to hear from you, Rachel, like, what do you think about how B5 goes about this? Because we've been going through these interrogation episodes and we've seen them hit the usual interrogation beats, but this as well, but this was always the secondary part. Like, you would have, Sebastian will electroshock them and get pleasure out of it. Like, whole sequences will be about how he's physically, like, he's going to kill Delenn. Or in And the Sky Full of Stars, it was always, if you're bad, I'm just going to hurt you. And then, you can hurt me too. And Franklin was dying during his. But what do you think about how this is just words upon words upon words?
It makes sense because for each of these interrogation episodes, the desired outcome on the point of view of the interrogator is different each time. And this one is about breaking Sheridan's spirit. So the tools to achieve that are obviously going to be psychological. But as William says, it'll be much easier to break your mind if we break your body first.
It's crude.
It's a means to an end. Whereas that was also a goal of Sebastian's, was to make them suffer physically. His sort of opening point of the truth is flexible and a matter of perspective is something that I circle back to a lot, because we speak a lot about absolute truths, but what those truths are do change, and sometimes they change slowly and sometimes they change quickly. It was a universal truth for a very long time that the earth was flat. It also makes me think of those kind of situations, like when he's bringing up what is truth and like where's the line and how flexible is it, because of how defensive people get when they think that their idea of the truth is being attacked.
I was really drawn to how he broke down Sheridan's job. You're a soldier. You say you're not political. You're not political, are you, by any chance? Oh, no. And a soldier's job is to accept that the truth changes on a daily basis and that you have to abide by that. And even if it is contradictory, you just have to do that. And we know how Sheridan views being a soldier throughout this series. He makes it very clear, and a part of his justifications for why he's fighting back against Earth is that you have to have a conscience and you have to be able to stand up and say, no, this is wrong morally. As a soldier, it is your job to do that as well. And one of the things I found to be brilliant in this is the interrogator rarely, if ever, brings up morals. He's always about truth. He's always about breaking things down in a very facts and logic, bureaucratic sense. Hence, he looks like an accountant. He looks like a pencil pusher. And he always obfuscates away from the ethics and the moral complexities, because that doesn't fit the argument points that we're going through.
No, it doesn't fit the narrative that they want to construct. And it makes sense that this kind of system would produce this kind of solution.
And the ability to resist, to fight back, to say no. Many times in this series, especially from the character of Sheridan, wells up from not just a sense of honor and nobility and justice, but from a deeply moral perspective. When Earth bombed Mars, that's when he said, no, I'm not going to allow that. Or when
attacking civilians and like people getting caught in the crossfire when they didn't do anything wrong or were just wrong place, wrong time. He has a very specific, Sheridan has a very specific view when it comes to people being victims.
These type of people, like the interrogator and the Clark administration, want to corral you into thinking purely about logic and facts and details. And
Black and white.
And if not, to get so stuck in the mud of arguing the finer points of those things that you're not thinking about the human condition. You're not thinking about morality and ethics and emotion, but that should be thought about. There's many times over you see in history, it's like these people will argue like scientifically this or logically this. We saw this with the Shadows, where they would talk about their theory of chaos like they were academically speaking. Like, sure, we'll kill several species, but it's for the betterment of others. They're removing so much, and that's what I really liked about Sheridan fighting back against this guy when he's motivating that Drazi to fight back, when he's defying this interrogator by every time I say no. There's always that grain of the human condition there that Sheridan realizes that, oh, I've been lost in trying to beat this guy in an argument, but that shouldn't actually matter, because what should actually matter is why I'm here in the first place. I'm here to do the morally right thing.
Listen to me. No, I don't know what they did to you in here. I know it must have been terrible, but it's all out here. It's all flesh. Now, I know you feel that they've won. But as long as you don't break inside, they can't win. Don't do this.
Going off that last point, you were talking about the Drazi when he was, motivating him. I really like that line he said where, I can't remember the exact words, but it was like, this is just flesh. Like, the torch techniques, it's only something they can do to the outside body, and it really encapsulates that whole idea of, it's about your actual morals, your ideals that you're holding strong to. Which is why he has the victory every time he says no. Every single time I've come onto Yum Yum, the last 3 episodes, I always bring up the point of insecurity I have walking in of, I'm not watching the show from the beginning. I'm worried about I have to catch up on stuff. And I always find myself falling into saying, wow, this episode actually kind of does stand on its own. Like, I feel like someone can watch this outside of context and get this or this or this out of it. I didn't have that insecurity walking into this one because I remember it was so, bottled, as you say. Self-contained. And it really, really held up in that regard here. So even though you'll bring up all this stuff about, Sheridan throughout the series, these things throughout the series, and I didn't have that fresh in my head because it's been like a year and a half since I've watched the whole show. I'll remind everyone that a week before I did the season 1 episode I did was when I finished Babylon 5. But yeah, just everything that you learn in this episode that gets brought up, it reminded me of... there are 2 things mainly that it reminded me of, which one of them I've seen after finishing Babylon 5. A couple of months ago, maybe a year ago, we watched the film 12 Angry Men.
Yes.
And in that one, that's about, the jurors are having a discussion about a court case that happened, and we, the audience, only see what's happening in the juror room. We don't know what's happened in the court room. We don't know exactly who the defendant is, but we learn these little bits of information as they get brought up. And in this episode, it feels like you could just walk in and this can be a sort of standalone short film. Like, here's a man who is being interrogated, and here's an interrogator. You don't know, the background behind the interrogator. You kind of pick up that, okay, it's an Earth Force. There's a guy named Clark, and you pick up that this guy here is some sort of rebel who's fighting against the Earth Force. And you get these little names. Like, I remember there was one point where the interrogator brings up, oh, no, sorry. It's when the Drazi's giving the confession, and he's like, I've been working with against A and B and C, and then Sheridan looks at the interrogator and says, like, oh, C didn't actually help you guys, but he's just someone that Clark, has
doesn't
an issue.
like.
Yeah.
Waste
he's
not, want.
inconvenient.
Yeah, and it's...
Waste not, want not.
And it, it would tell a clueless audience, like, okay, the first 2 are, real, but, the third one is just like, oh... these guys are really that corrupt that they are really making up stuff and being very blasé about it with this interrogator guy. And even the flashback at the beginning, which is, flashing back to real things that happened, I would almost compare that to the Greenbird sequence in Cowboy Bebop when he's falling off the church and you're getting these flashbacks to things that, like, you don't get the full context of, but visually they tell you so much.
And it's also about the feeling of those moments and those memories and the idea, particularly in this episode, of those being hinge points.
Yeah. He's not just Rebel A who happens to work in the third room from the left of the big spaceship. He is, big deal guy who's talked to big deal people.
The episode plays around with time and the manipulation of time, and to disorient Sheridan, we lose track of it. Good morning. Now it's lunchtime. Now it's supper time. You can't have this at this time. And Sheridan is left on the floor throwing up his guts for who knows how long. We don't know, nor does he. And he's strapped in a chair with this audio being played over and over again for who knows how long. And so they may not be necessarily wanting to make him forget things, but they are distorting his ability to grasp a reality. He isn't able to sleep. He isn't able to eat. They're breaking his mind, body, and soul. And so another brilliant piece of the torture I loved, another great bit, is that sandwich. We all love the sandwich and how that performer really makes it look delicious. He's just chewing into it. Oh, it's so good. And he's wiping his mouth and everything. And when he reveals about it being poison, that it's the toxins, and that you have to get a build up to it, and you have to enjoy a little bit of poison each day to get an immunity and to really embrace it. I've always looked at that as a few different things being commented upon there. At the beginning, obvious poison sandwich. Another part of it was that followed on from a conversation where he specifically references Delen's existence. And so I've always taken it as a bit of, at the beginning of it, a bit of a jab of like, you've allowed these foreign elements, these toxins, these aliens to come into you and to affect you. And over time, you've accepted it. You've become normal to it. You've embraced it. You've embraced them as a lover. But also, I think it ties into what is the central goal of the interrogator, which is, I'm feeding you a little piece of misinformation and a little piece of lies and a little piece of distorted truth.
This, then you can accept
that.
And then you have to accept this bigger thing, and it just snowballs. And I think a point where I really stopped and appreciated that was when it's just like he starts out just trying to get Sheridan to confirm that Ivanova is his second.
Name names, please.
And then it snowballs into, well, if you say this, then you say this, and then Ivanova is this.
We saw this with Zach Allen with the Night Watch. It's the same move, which is, well, it's already been confirmed that that's the case. We just need you to confirm it. And once you've done that, that means you've accepted responsibility for that. So that means we can now do this. And you can't disagree. Hey, Zach, could you please confirm that shopkeeper did say these things? We've already got it on a record, but could you just confirm that he did say these things? And that's him here with little things like, could you confirm that you said you weren't political? Yeah, I'm not political. Okay, so that's interesting. We didn't think so either. So that must mean this, right? And it's like, no, you're going to argue that, but you agreed to this before. And so I look at that line about the toxins and how you have to build up an immunity to them. And over time, you agree to it. And that's how he's trying to break Sheridan in this episode. You've agreed it's lunchtime. Well, you've agreed that it was nice that I got that information about your father. The polite thing, the next thing you would say is, thank you for that. And I just was really enamored by that line, because I think on other watches, I look at it very, very just two-dimensionally as like, oh, he's telling him he's poisoned the sandwich, because I think we all knew that the sandwich was
there was some
good.
Sort of trickery at
There was going to be a
play.
trick.
Yeah, it's just like, you're not just going to give
Sorry,
him...
let me just remind us all, bag of cruel tricks and mind games. That's where the sandwich came from, as well as the information about him not being political.
You know, about that sandwich, Captain. It's a funny thing about toxins. I've always felt that if you eat a little poison every day, you get used to it. It desensitizes you until you can swallow large amounts of it with no difficulty whatsoever. I've always thought that that was a metaphor. I could just never decide what form.
We've figured out what's keeping you alive is those fucking morals, those ideals. So let's break them apart. Let's show you that they don't exist, that you change whenever you want it to be convenient. You should listen to the government because they're smarter than you, they're better than you, they're right. That's the truth. You can't beat that because that's a pillar of society that cannot go away. You, on the other hand, you can fade away and it'll mean nothing. You could die here right now and we'll replace you with a deep fake, with an artificial version of you. It will never be as good because there'll always be doubt. But guess what? It will be good enough.
God, that whole thing was a lot more relevant on my rewatch than the first time I watched it like a year and a half ago, right?
Oh, yeah.
AIs are the big thing right now for people listening 10 years in the future.
Bartek, as people who have studied drama and have done theatre productions, you can definitely see how this has that theatre quality to it.
Oh, yeah, the Black Room.
And the ability for scenes to set themselves up, where it's like, oh, a character just leaves a room, fade the lights off, fade him back in, the character comes back in the room, now it's a new scene.
I've always kind of had the thing when I watch like a TV show. Obviously these days if I do watch a TV show, I've got like the episodes available to me. I don't have commercial breaks or anything like that. There always is this sort of like, okay, here it is, like the cut to commercial. It's like, oh, well, it's not a commercial for me. It's just going to fade to black and then fade back in. And I suppose there is an element of like, okay, well, it's ending a scene and the next scene's going to be like a sort of fresh start. But the fact that that artifact of, you know, the television era is still there is kind of still like, you got to have it. But in this one, the fact that, you know, I still have that cut in my downloaded copy of the episode kind of does give that, theater effect of, hey, this is when your track of time is going to be gone. And you've got like, you know, the music cuts out because obviously that's what's going to happen. Then it cuts back in, or music or ambience. And then, you've got the whole mystery of like any amount of time has passed, but right now you're back on the clock. We're back on real time.
That's actually a great point, because that's something I don't consider about anymore as well, that we watch things with the ad breaks, but we don't have ads. So like the function of them don't exist anymore. And so there is that level of, oh, they've written this to end like this because that's what you do to make a punchy end of an act break for when you go into the ads, like the 5-act structure of TV. But that doesn't need to be anymore, and so
it's there to serve a function that no longer exists.
Yeah, it's an artifact,
which is a weird reflection on the content of this episode as well, which was totally unintentional at the point when it was made.
It would have been a lot funnier though if this was one of the shows that has like a specific like musical stinger for when it's ad break. Like in Saved by the Bell, whenever there's like an ad break, they go da-na-na.
But we get towards the very end when Sheridan has really been not budging on things, and we get that frantic scene where he just bursts in and just leans right close to him, and he's saying it like in a tone of voice where we don't have enough time. It almost comes across, if you weren't watching the rest of the episode, that, oh, this guy's going to try and break him out. Like, he has that level of energy to it. But it's him saying, here's the reason why we're doing everything the way we're doing it. Here's the reason why you're not dead. Here's the reason why all of this is played out like this. And it goes into the, you are a threat to their credibility. The tactic used right towards the end is to give this effect to Sheridan of, you've beaten us. You have beaten us to the point where I'm going to admit to you a weakness of ours that you are exposing that we cannot overcome. So now you can be comforted enough for me to lure you into the next trap.
And it also builds upon the attempted subtext that he's been pushing of, like, I am actually kind of on your side here. Because, like, when he bursts in and, like, talks to him, he's like, hey, this morning they just said that it's all right to kill you off now. So, you know, you're in deep shit right now, so please do what I'm telling you. I've been comparing this, I guess, plot in my head, but I haven't brought it up yet this episode, to a lot of the stuff in the Metal Gear games that are the prequels, like 3 and the other ones set in the Cold War. And there are a lot of parallels going on here. Like, we brought up this interrogator brought up the whole idea of, like, you know, alliances and enemies changing. Big thing in the Cold War,
Yeah.
you know, America and Russia were the allies in World War II, but then they were enemies Cold War. The whole idea of an ex-war hero defecting or, like, potentially having defected, you know, turning them into a big villain after they were the big hero. Yeah, I guess it kind of makes sense that this show was made shortly after the end of the Cold War.
Oh, yeah.
Because, like, that ended, what, like 1991?
Yeah, around then.
And this episode would have been, like, 96, 97, 98?
Yeah. People debate when it really ended, but a lot of people use the wall falling as
the end. And that's why Earth is handled really well in this show, where there's obvious parallels to Nazism, with the Night Watch with their armbands and a lot of the rhetoric, but we also see McCarthy-era America be used. This is very much like that. Name names. It's fine. It's okay. Just do that. It's the right thing to do. Listen to the government, please. Because you get to that point where if you step back far enough, you go, what's really the difference? It's some way of taking away people's liberties, their freedoms, their morality, under the guise of the government knows best.
Yeah.
We know best. We have an ideal that is better than yours, and you should obey it because we're right and you're wrong. So just listen because you're children.
We've talked before about how JMS goes to sort of the ideas, philosophies, and ideologies behind things. And that enables a sort of sense of universality of, well, we can map sort of Nazi history over the top of this. We can map terrorism responses over this as well, because it's about the ideas behind those things and the justifications that humans give to those kinds of decisions over and over and over again.
Hence, this feels for many people who are watching it, you know, for the first time or watching it relatively recently, it has that prescient feel. A year ago when you watched this, Bartek, that comment about the deepfake stuff, blah, blah, wouldn't have hit as hard, but now it hits as hard. Well, the thing is, it goes in waves. We're talking about, like, McCarthyism and Nazism, but, like, a lot of the torture techniques that are used in this episode were very much topic of conversation during the Bush years, post 9/11, Guantanamo Bay, and there's, like, whole documentaries and whole cases about that what was that movie? The Men Who Stare at Goats has a whole plot line. That whole movie came as a plot line to be because we found out about the torture interrogation method of playing music over and over and over again to people we wanted information from. That's used here as well. I can't remember, it was like the Teletubbies or something. Barney the Dinosaur. They would play Barney the Dinosaur over and over again. And yet this was still made before all of that came out, but it still feels prescient because, like with Babylon 5 does with a lot of things about humanity, both good and bad, whether it is, you know, we still have religion in the future, but we also still have poverty. We still have bigotry and hatred and fascism, and all of that can still thrive in the future of this show because it's really about how you see this writer, JMS, and some of the others as well, just look at history and go, have you ever noticed that we just repeat patterns? And we just change the names of things, and we may change some of the methodology behind what we do, but it's the same thing. We just do it again and again and again and again. And here we are doing it in a few hundred years in the future, And isn't it funny that when you watch this episode in 1996 or 1997, you will go, oh, it relates to these things in the past, but then cut 5 years in the future and it's like, wow, that episode has aged really well.
I demand to see an attorney. I demand the presence of a full military tribunal. You have no right.
No, you have no rights. There's no courtroom here, Captain. No tribunals, no attorneys, no justice, no mercy, no fairness, no hope, no last-minute escape. You will walk through that door when you confess and not 1 second before.
One of the methods to break Sheridan, they realize, is, oh, he's too sure of himself. Well, what happens if we hurt someone else in front of him? Because he has empathy. That silly old Sheridan has empathy for others. He has the innate ability to feel for other people. So what happens if we drag somebody in and just threatened them in front of him and made them be an example of what we could do to you, Sheridan, if you don't do what we want?
And Sheridan went, is that an alien?
A Drazi. Those guys fight over colors.
I thought you were a Solid Snake for a second. Drazi.
Rachel, could you walk us through what is happening with this Drazi and who plays him?
Wayne Alexander is back. He's back in some alien makeup.
This is the third time we've seen him in alien makeup. He was Lorian, and he was a random Narn in an episode, and now he's back.
Yep.
Sebastian felt alien.
Yeah, but that's just him.
But yeah, he was from Britain.
Yeah, they're aliens. Freaky guys with their English accents. Ugh.
Oh, Robin Atkin Downes.
Robin Atkin Downes, remember Byron?
Well, he has already played an alien, actually, at this point.
Yeah, he played him in Mbryo with a British accent.
Mbryo.
But, Rachel, we got Wayne Alexander. He's back.
Yes, he is back. He gets dragged in originally. And the interrogator gets him to spout some bullshit about I helped Sheridan, I manipulated Sheridan, I did these things with the help of these people, and that links back to the Ivanova conversation, and we already brought up how they just like threw in a senator.
Yeah, just some random senator. He's not involved, but we just want to get rid of him.
Yeah, we just want a justification. It's fine. It's fine. And then Sheridan thinks and is led to believe that he convinces the Drazi to not continue with the confession, to stand up to the oppressive and manipulative government.
Don't give in to your fear.
And it's just like what he's saying is really powerful. And it's playing into Sheridan's ego of you want to be inspiring other people. You may not be politically driven, but you are politically minded. And then we get the reveal
at the very end of the episode.
At the very end of the episode,
because the Drazi says no. He's like, I'm not going to do it.
Says no.
You get a big moment of sudden shift of tension where you know this is your last chance.
Yep.
You know this, right?
And those lines are repeated with Sheridan because Sheridan's led to believe that they electrocute the Drazi to death because they take him away. The power drops out. He's hearing screaming before that, but not after that.
Yeah.
That's what Room 17 does.
That's what Room 17, because it's scary. It's scary because they bring this Drazi in and we don't know who it is, nor does Sheridan. And it's just some random alien that they've dragged in and they've beaten him to crap. And now he's at this point of admitting anything they want because he just wants to be free, even though that's not going to happen. That's just not going to happen. He was expendable before he walked through that door. He was your alibi. and you threw it away. Do you not have compassion, Sheridan? But he has this brilliant moment. Wayne Alexander, yes, played Sebastian, the Inquisitor. And I don't think it's by an accident that they had him come in for this episode. But he earlier played Lorien this season, which was a very kind character, a very close character to Sheridan. So to see him acting off of Bruce Boxleitner yet again is marvelous. And this may be something I'm picking up on, but there's this facial expression he has when Sheridan launches into it. When Sheridan starts to do the motivation, you see the Drazi turn his head away, and he has this, what can look like a wince on his face, but to me, there's just this hint of, yes, I got him to do it. Like there's this,
you played into my hand.
I don't know, there's just a little bit of that hint to it. And
knowing what I do, because this is a rewatch and I know that at the end it's going to be that he was in on it the whole time, it did give me not like an interpretation of you played into my hand, but more of an interpretation of okay, so this is how he's going to play into it. Maybe the interrogators didn't know what Sheridan was going to do or how strongly it would work. And so maybe that was his moment of breaking out of the act and just observing what's happening.
But it's very quiet. They don't make a big deal out of it. It's just one of those things where when you're watching it that first time, you're so caught up on who's this? Why are they? No, they're doing this to this poor guy. Like with Sheridan, when you get this is your last shot, this is your last chance.
Do you understand that this is your last chance?
You are like Sheridan, that dawning realization of, no, don't kill this guy. This guy hasn't done anything. Leave him alone.
I don't even know him.
We don't know him. Sheridan doesn't know him. You feel compassion for this person that we don't know anything about. Hence, it bites Sheridan and us in the arse at the very end of the episode. But, I mean, for you, Bartek, both on the original watch and this watch, this is an element thrown in. Here you go. Sheridan, you think you've been comfortable with us doing the good morning thing to you and coming in and laying out the table and cleaning my glasses? Well, guess what? We're changing that now. Bring this guy in.
Yeah, it gives someone that Sheridan can actually empathize with, of someone who's in the same situation as him. So the fact that he treats him differently to our interrogator and, anyone else who he interacted with, shows okay, here's the real Sheridan coming out saying the inspirational things that he would say. The fact that, yes, this is they don't think he's it's vague, but this is the rebel leader right here inspiring the troop.
How do you feel about how Sheridan, even though he has empathy, in a way this is him winning an argument or proving his point? I can motivate this guy to say no. I prove my point by doing that. That's his argument at the very end of, and how will you win? By every time I say no. And so with this moment here, you have this poor guy that's interrogated, and Sheridan does that. He motivates him to say no. And it's in part because it's, again, the right thing to do. But in the context of the episode, it is also there for him to prove his point to the interrogator. Because you even see the interrogator during the scene looking over, being like,
this is going differently.
This is working. I mean, what do you think about just that angle of it that you can look at it with as well?
No, it's good. Even when you do have the revelation that the guy was in on it all along, I didn't see it as big a deal as it was the first time round, because at the end of the day, Sheridan was still being true to himself. That doesn't change just because the person he was talking to was an actor.
But it could shake the foundation that he's built throughout the episode for sure.
Oh, it could definitely fuck with him right at the end when he realizes, but in the moment, and in the wider context, it's still, it was a genuine thing from Sheridan.
Babylon 5 can on the occasion be commented on as being very pessimistic, bleak, even hopeless at times. People are so used to wanting their the science fiction media to be a Star Wars or a Star Trek, where either you beat the bad guy or you lecture them and we have a happy ending. Yay.
Fit in this box.
You fight back against the power and you win, and it's good. And Babylon 5 doesn't always abide by that. Sometimes it will be, hey, Franklin found a cure for this disease, but too bad the whole species died. And people don't care. People make jokes about it. And here, a whole episode is very bleak and oppressive. And it's Sheridan fighting back. Sheridan making his case. Hey, I helped prove this. And, oh, I got you on a logical fallacy there. And all of that. But at the end of the day, at the end of the episode, he loses. Like, he loses. He thought, oh, I've gotten them to the point where they're going to kill me. Like, my death is still a win. I still can die knowing that my values got to them.
He died fighting.
He died fighting. And then it reveals, no, you're just in a new room. We're starting again. And that Drazi, that one thing you saw as a victory, wasn't a victory. We organized that.
We often complain about the showrunners of different properties not wanting to get grime on their characters. And JMS is getting real gritty with John in this section of the season. Like, he's going all in now that he's not being held back by Delen's opinions and morality.
But she still grounds him. The image of Delenn
gives him
motivates
hope. Because we know that from when he talks to her after he came back from Zahadum. Like, you're the reason that I didn't want to die.
When you were a soldier, you fought the Mbryo. The Mbryo were the enemy. That was the truth. And then one day someone said the Mbryo are no longer the enemy. And that was the truth. And you not only accepted them as allies, you embraced them. You took one of them as a lover.
It's not the way.
You swore an oath to Earth Force because you believed in it. That was the truth. Now Earth Force is supposed to be the enemy. Now that is the truth. It all depends on what you believe and what other people tell you to believe. The truth is fluid. The truth is subjective.
No!
I think it's time for the spotlight. The part of the show where we talk about an actor or actress that appeared in a given episode, go over their performance, their career, any interesting pieces of trivia we have learned about them. And we have to talk about William the Interrogator, played by Ray, spelt with an E at the end.
Raya.
Yeah, Burke. Spelt like Kirk, but with a B. He has a very interesting name. It's like, I look at it and go, that name looks like a normal name, but there's just things I'm not used to about it. Now, Bartek, I imagine one of the reasons that this episode hits so well for you is we get a fantastic, at least in my opinion, a pretty fantastic guest performance.
Oh, yeah.
At the center of it all. So
all of the interrogation episodes, the one doing the questioning is always really knocked it out of the park, and this one is no exception.
So tell us a bit about what you think of this performance, some moments in it that you like, some tricks of the trade that he's using that tickle your fancy.
Well, like what we were saying, he's got all these modes that he can jump into while still giving this presence of, the pencil pusher, this kind of normal-looking guy. There was somewhere I read online that described him as like the textbook example of like the banality of evil. When you think of evil, you think of, big, mean, Hitler, devil guy.
Ari Benzane with the big scar on his face, and he's like, I'm taking over Babylon 5 because I deserved it.
Yeah, but this guy is, bald guy in a suit, who would assume working in an office. He's got his briefcase of, what was it? The bag of cruel tricks and mind games. But to the naked eye, that bag is just full of papers and his lunch and
pen
and just normal, boring stuff. And he encapsulates all of this psychological manipulation through how he looks, how he acts, what props he has. And yeah, you have so many questions at the end of the episode about, like, was he, he was saying the truth a lot of the time, but did he have more of a stake in all of this than he was letting on? Did he have more of a sympathetic edge to Sheridan, like he was letting on. There are all these mysteries that we'll never get an answer to. This episode, just on paper, is this psychological bottle in which, like, did any of this really happen? It almost feels like the fact that I'm assuming this character is never directly referenced ever again.
No, not really. No.
Not really, no. Just kind of adds to this whole mystique of, like, this was a guy who was around, but, we can't really say all that much about him because he's just surrounded in all this mystery, and the actor really, nailed that sort of character.
He's an enigma. You can't pin him down, and the best you can is you get a feeling. When you're watching a scene, you get an overall sensation and feeling, but it's hard to articulate it because if you break it down, it's just, he's a slippery character by design, and the actor does a marvelous job. Truly, truly stellar. I mean, this is what you want. I can't think of a better way to have portrayed this because he jumps around so many different modes while still playing it very passively. There's one moment I wrote down as, this is the character, at least to me, showing that he is enjoying this, which is when he was going through you say you're not influenced by others, but aren't we all influenced? And he has a jovial quality, but even at the beginning of that, there was a sense of enjoyment of, yes, Sheridan helps make it so that I can use this old routine. Like, that was there, but it wasn't so overwhelmingly bonk bonk on the head about it. It was trusting the actor to bring that flavor to it, but not too much. I look at this like cooking, where it's all the right amount of ingredients made into this. It's not too spicy, but it's not bland. He is so wonderful. I mean, this guy, we look at his career and he's a comedy guy. Like, most of what he does is like comedy performance when it comes to his film and television work. A lot of humor. And we haven't even mentioned, like, the episode's funny at times. Like, the episode isn't so bleak that it makes me want to die, for some people, they can't watch this episode more than once because they find it so much.
Yeah, this is definitely the type of character that I can see you really loving, Ryan, because you got that dark humor of this character who's kind of playing it jovially, but it's like a really dark situation, kind of like when we did that Australian film, The Oubliette People.
Oh, yeah, the loved ones.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed him so much. He is an actor too, at least from my perspective. He really loves using props because a lot of this performance is him fiddling with things. Those glasses, I don't mean this as disrespect to the writing, but I think 70% of his character is in those glasses. You see those glasses when he takes them off and he has the indents on the side of his head because they're so tight, those glasses. Everything about those glasses, the way he cleans them, the way he puts them on, how they frame his face, tells me everything I need to know. It tells me everything I need to know, that he's just this little guy, this little accountant, this little pen pusher, but he's always watching, he's always inspecting things, he's always up close and personal, and I just really adore just that touch of, like, he's bald, yes, he's got the nice suit, but what really identifies him to me, other than just the actor's general demeanor, are those little round spectacles.
I haven't fully done an interpretation of what this made me feel. Maybe when I finish talking, I'll have settled on something. But one thing that I did always get drawn to is related to his glasses. They're in this dark room with, like, specific spots of light, and some of the light actually does shine, like, onto the glasses, and it creates the shadow of, like, the edge of the frame, like, under his eye, to give these, like, little black shadowy lines under his eye. Yeah. And something about that is just kept giving me this thought of, like, this is something I feel like I would see in, like, a fantasy thing. Like, this is, like, almost like a sort of, like, demonic fantasy version of, like, a teardrop tattoo under the eyes. It's like, what is going on here?
I thought you were going to bring up being a big fan of anime. I thought you were going to bring up, he also has that other effect that anime uses when glasses are covered
frame.
in nothing but white light, and it gives them this very ominous sensation, like was it Gendo in
Gendo was a big one, yeah.
in
the Sin City
Evangelion
guy.
And I got that sensation from him many times. One of my favorite shots is when he's cleaning his glasses and he's got them above him and he's looking at them, and you get this magnified light on the eyes, and it just does. It's very.
It's part of his routine. Also, does he even need the glasses? Like,
well, he had to leave the room to get them.
Yeah, but
so he said.
So he said, but like, it's something to manipulate and fiddle with. So even if he didn't actually like need a prescription, I can see him using that as part of his persona as an interrogator.
It humanizes him.
Well, it gives him more an office worker quality, going back to that idea.
Comes in with the briefcase and he's wearing the suit, and it all adds up to a particular image of who this person is. And he's continually using those assumptions against Sheridan.
I can save your life. Right now. If you'll let me.
Because it's very specific moments that help build up the idea that this is a character that's been forged by the world that we've started to hate. We don't like Earth at this point in the show. We don't trust them. And we know that that kind of person, as an individual, would be fostered in this kind of environment. And one particular moment that I was appreciating a lot more on this watch was when he's really in Sheridan's face and he's like, are you aware this is your last chance? And he's parroting back to the moment with the Drazi, right? But when I look at his eyes, and because I know he's afraid for his own life, not for Sheridan's, that's why he's so desperate. Because you're not disposable. I am. If I fail, I'm dead. And none of that is said. But that's the conclusion.
Well, he says he's expendable, and Sheridan, you're not, but it's been decided that you are, and then reveal, actually, no, you're still not expendable.
Yeah.
You're still...
And it's just like, well, we assume that he was dealt with and probably dead, but we assumed that about the Drazi, and we were wrong.
And the fact that there's just another guy, he mentions that there's just other people, so he's probably just moved to a different case, or he's just sitting there watching, going, "Okay,
it could
use this method."
Like
I liked using
he
that
left
one.
the room, turned to the new interrogator, said, "All right, your turn. Here's the suit,"
and
he's stripped naked right there.
Goes back. It goes back to the idea that Ivanova misattributed to John. The person's expendable, the job's not. And the job of interrogating Sheridan is necessary. It's not replaceable. It's there to stay. So the fact that it is swapped out for another person and now they get a shot and they're going to do their thing to try and crack him open, it makes sense. And it's part of what makes the Civil War interesting, because that kind of thing is showing us what they've been telling us about how it's hard to go against your own people, how it's hard to see what you know and the values that you have twisted and manipulated beyond their intended purpose from your perspective. So the idea of, we know that Ivanova is out there continuing the fight. We don't see that. We don't have to. It's not part of this story. But knowing that she's spurred on by that idea in a way that we see as positive as the audience, and the interrogators using it against somebody that we deeply care about.
Bartek, are you at all familiar with this actor? Have you seen him in anything else?
There were a couple of things when I was looking on his IMDb. They're like, oh yeah, I've seen this. I, would have seen him in this, and I possibly but probably haven't seen him in this thing, but nothing to the point where I remember. Like,
nothing strikes you.
You always bring up like, oh, it's Papschmier from the Naked Gun movies, and I never really remember who that is.
He's like the recurring villain in all of them.
Yeah, and I was reading up like, okay, what is he specifically doing? It seems like it was a smaller role in the first film and it's bigger in the third one, which that's kind of my big thing. It's like, oh, every time I've rewatched them, like I've rewatched the first one a lot, the second one a little bit less, and the third one a lot less, just because I've never gone through like the whole trilogy.
Yeah.
And I remember little bits about that third one, but now that I am aware of him, it would be worth seeing again. Just like, here's our interrogator.
Yeah, he is, I think, in the opening scene of the first movie, if I'm not mistaken, it's the first movie. Yeah, where it's like the council of all of these different political figures. There's like Gorbachev there, and there's like Saddam and all that. And they talk about like how they are operating their evil plan. And then Drebin comes in, does an action sequence. But Papschmier is sitting there at the desk. And the joke is like, here we have all of these iconic evil figures, or like these iconic political figures, and then there's this little Weasley guy in a suit just looking around, just not really
it's
saying
William.
anything. It's him.
I always say I love those movies, but I need to really rewatch them. I haven't watched them since I watched the first one like 2015. Haven't rewatched any of them.
You watched Police Squad, the show.
Police Squad, yeah. And it also said that he was in an episode of Seinfeld, which I've seen every episode, but I don't really remember.
He was in the face paint episode, the one where Puddy, Elaine's boyfriend, played by Patrick Warburton, likes to paint his face, and she can't handle that.
And it said that he was in an episode of Saved by the Bell, the new class, which I have seen bits of when I was younger, but I don't remember as well. It wasn't as good.
Would you be surprised what role he played in that? He played a superintendent.
Yeah, that's right. He played a superintendent.
A lot of authority figures,
but authority
scattered throughout his career.
But authority figures that are very administrative is the way I would go about them. Clinical.
We've
or clerks
made the accountant
like
comparison
already. He probably had a good rapport with Mr. Belding in that episode. I don't know.
Was he in that one? I didn't know if he was in all of the Saved by the Bells.
I think Mr. Belding's like the only character that's in like everything.
Okay, so
the principal.
We have mentioned it. He plays a lot of roles that are nebbish.
Yeah.
He reminds me of William Forward, the actor of Lord Reefer, where he, outside of Babylon 5, would, because he was a middle-aged, white, balding man, he would play a lot of doctors, accountants, the boss of the lady in the episode, and da-da-da-da-da. But unlike this guy, William Forward never got outside of Babylon 5 that role, like that recurring role or that bit role. He was always a one-and-doneer. This guy has had roles in shows where he was ongoing, or like, 5 or more episodes, or like 10 or plus episodes of things. And again, he had in his career on IMDb related, because he does have theater work that I'll talk about, mainly comedies. Like, he would play comedic roles a lot. He would do a lot of funny stuff. Like, he will be in movies and there'll be comedy movies, or he'll be in comedy shows. Like, he's in all of the shows, Night Court, Golden Girls, The Wonder Years, Newhart, Alf.
Cheers.
Yeah, and the same character in Frasier and Cheers, of course, where he was, get this, the crudgy old boss of one of the characters who would come in and say things. Third Rock from the Sun. He would be in all of those type of things. Seinfeld, as mentioned. And, of course, drama-wise, he was also in all of the big shows. The X-Files he was in.
Days of Our Lives.
And Star Trek. Of course, doing sci-fi, he was in Star Trek.
Yeah.
And so he was in the first season of Star Trek and in one of the movies.
TNG and Insurrection.
Yeah, which is a TNG movie. And so he was in Hill Street Blues, which is relevant because they often get actors from there because some of the production worked there, and obviously some of the actors were from Hill Street Blues. Peter Jurasik was a recurring character on Hill Street Blues. I don't know exactly where they got him from, but I'm guessing the theater realm, because this guy's a big theater guy, and they get a lot of theater actors in their shows as well, like Wayne Alexander, the interrogator.
Yeah, theater actors and anime dub people.
Which often are the same. And I wouldn't be surprised if Wayne Alexander is involved. I didn't find any evidence of that, but Wayne Alexander has been involved in getting other actors and other production people in Babylon 5 because he has a theater background with them. Emperor Kataja, he was somebody that Wayne Alexander knew from theater work, and so here he is in Babylon 5 getting to chew up the scenery because that actor knew half the people who worked on B5 for theater.
A lot of the characters you're mentioning right now are characters that I would describe as theatrical.
Yes, and so I love that his career in TV and film has been playing these nebbish roles, these type of roles, but with more of an overt comedic lens, because I can see that a little bit. But since this episode is quite serious and he's saying so many things and they're being delivered pretty straight, you can also be surprised by that fact. Like, this is a comedy guy, and we know from the fact that many of the actors here in the show that are mainstays, like Peter Jurasik, like Stephen Furst, are comedy actors. Like, that's their specialty. That's the thing that they're known for. That's the thing that they thrive doing. Yet, Babylon 5 gives them the material and says, come up to the plate and let's hit it out of the park. And here's a whole episode where this guy who's known for doing comedies on TV and film, you are going to do this role. You're going to be one of the main players. It's not comedy specific. There's little bits of comedy, but it's not a comedic role. And they trust him just to do that because you seem like a good actor. You probably gave a good audition or you look right for the part. I adore that so much about B5, where they'll get actors who have a certain image in their career, whether it is like Stephen Furst or even Walter Koenig, your Chekhov from Star Trek, and yet they can come in and make him Bester, one of the scariest motherfuckers. They do that time and time again with big or small characters in their roster, whether it's a guest star or a mainstay.
I find that most remarkable.
I mean, aren't we all under the influence of others? It's part of being in the world. Somebody in the office is in a bad mood. Pretty soon everybody's in a bad mood. We're all influenced by other people. You've really never been influenced by anyone else?
I just want to acknowledge he's another Spotlight actor that was in Touched by an Angel.
One of your favorite shows. He was not in Gilmore Girls, though.
No.
Tragic.
No. And note that he was in Columbo, because I don't think you mentioned that.
No, he was in the 90s Columbo,
yes,
so
97, which is after this.
This guy's got a lot of credits in his career. He
does.
But the interesting thing I noted was he stopped TV and film acting around, what was it, 2013, I want to say. But basically, he started doing this massive run from the mid-'80s right to the late 90s, and then really dwindled off in the 2000s, like really slowed down.
Switched modes.
But this guy has nearly 100 credits all around that, and it's like, you look at it and it's like within like a 12-year span, he fit that all in, while some of the other actors we do on the Spotlight, they have pretty much the same amount as he does over their 30, 40-year career. This guy fitted in real quick and then said, I'm out.
He was neglecting a lot of paperwork while he was acting.
So, are you ready to get into some more of the personal facts? So IMDb says that he was a professor of theatre studies at a university for a while.
In Los Angeles.
I butchered that, the idea that
he was a professor of theater at a university in Southern California. I did look on Twitter. As of 2017, somebody was talking about how they were excited to do his class. So that was roughly around the time he has since moved into Massachusetts in 2020. So I don't think he's a professor at the same college, if at all a professor still.
I noticed on IMDb that someone put him in a list that was titled actors, and that's actor 'S, who have played gay.
That is true. You want to know a fact about that? Golden Girls. He was a very
Yep.
sassy gay character there.
One of his
very funny.
earliest jobs as well. So I found a very fun article from Twin Cities Pioneer Press, which is titled 9 Questions with Veteran Twin Cities actor Ray Burke. He's also done a lot of stage work as well. Like, even though his TV credits have dried up.
That hasn't.
Yeah. He's still working. He's just
Yeah, he was in a
doing it on
play
more stage.
right up until the start of this year.
Yep.
With Mark Rylance, the Academy Award-winning actor.
So in this article, he says, I've always been a character actor all of my life, and I've always played roles I was older than. So it's great when you're suddenly the right age. Like, he's now old enough to play the roles that he was playing like 20 years ago. 'Cause
Yeah, he was 14 in this episode.
he acknowledges that, like, he did King Lear when he was definitely not the age that King Lear is meant to be.
Mm.
He said such a quaint answer. Like, they're like, some of these questions are like really just boilerplate kind of interview questions.
hmm
One of them is, what would you do if you had $1 million?
Get someone else to finish your paperwork.
No.
Buy a new pen for my paperwork.
New pencil to push.
I'd get a place to go in winter that's a bit warmer.
Thank you, Ray.
How quaint.
Don't have to wear a jacket.
Who do you think he wants to play him in a movie?
I mean, he looks like Richard Jenkins, so Richard Jenkins should play him in a
Jason
movie.
Alexander.
He should, he's going to say someone with a full head of hair. I mean, knowing him.
Fabio.
Yeah, Fabio. Robin Atkin Downs should play me in a movie. No, who did he suggest?
He suggested 2 people.
Jason Alexander and Fabio.
No, funnily enough, it's Robert Duvall and Bob Newhart.
That makes sense. He
Okay,
was on
yeah.
Newhart as well. And both of those actors make sense. Newhart has that nervous, I'm just a guy who can't stop babbling type energy, and Robert Duvall just kind of looks like this guy too.
Yeah, Robert Duvall in Falling Down, especially.
Right, yeah. And this guy, I should point out, usually has a mustache. Every time I've seen him, not when he was like in a TV show, like outside of TV, he usually has a mustache. Like, he likes wearing a little mustache.
Okay. So he is not a person who set out to be an actor from a young age. It's not what he thought he would do with his life.
Can I guess?
Yes.
Can I guess? Just looking at him, I'm in a room with 2 of you. I think he was going to be a teacher.
But what kind?
Well,
Business teacher.
No. It has to be a twist. We're thinking of him as very mundane.
Yeah.
He needs to do something else.
Outdoor education.
Oh, yeah, he's like their sports teacher. Could you imagine him? He's like got a
I was
like a
going
football.
to be a physical education teacher.
Yes, like Hugh Jackman.
Him and Hugh Jackman should be in a movie together as teachers.
So he goes on, my freshman year in college, I talked to people in the field and I realized I was going to be stuck in a gym with basketball. So maybe I wanted to teach something else. My freshman English teacher, who, for want of a better term, was a failed actor, was always trying to get guys to try out for the play, so in my spring quarter I tried out for Cat on a Hot Tin Roof. I was cast as Reverend Porter, and I fell in love with making plays.
Oh, that's nice.
So I changed schools to Northwestern, and I was on that path from that time.
I have learned that his theatre work, he's done quite a plethora of roles, but one of the plays he goes back to a lot, or at least I've seen referenced multiple times, is A Christmas Carol. So he has played Marley, but he has also played Scrooge himself. So I think that's really interesting. Like, that's a role he keeps coming back to. And even before we did this episode recording, I remember months and months ago, I saw an article on one of the B5 subreddits or groups or whatever of him in all of this garb of a Christmas Carol, like the period piece clothing. And it was just an interview talking about this production he was doing and just how much he loves to portray characters in Dickens' work and stuff like that. And I just find that such a exhilarating thing to read about, because most actors, I never hear them say, oh, I love doing something like A Christmas Carol, which is a story that has always been going. We always get remakes and redos and retellings and productions of it, but I've never heard anyone talk about it with such flair and passion like he does, where he's played Marley, he's played Scrooge. And there was an article I read, I don't know if you read this one, Rachel, where it was an interview with him and a fellow acting friend of his. It's almost like this is his duo. Like, he is there's this acting duo, this one theater group that they have, where at one time the other guy played Scrooge and he played Marley, and then they swapped around. And the actor's name is Peter Michael Gauthiers. I can't remember. I'm not too sure how to pronounce the last name, but PMG they keep calling him. There's an interview with them. It's just a written interview, but you can tell that these guys are almost like an old married couple.
Yeah.
Like, they tell stories of their career, and he talks about, I actually read the Cat on the Hot Tin Roof, and he's like, I did that at school and everyone commended me and it was great. And then the other guy snapped in and went, he's never had a bigger success than that one. and then he snaps back like, you're damn right. I peaked right then and there. And it's just, they have this
The banter.
The banter is just so electrifying, and they just really know each other. And from what I gather is he knows he's a character actor. He knows it and he embraces it.
Yeah.
And he talked about in that interview, this was in 2012, so this is 11 years ago, that acting is getting harder when you're older, even when you're a character actor. Like, he actually broke down something I've always wondered, which is there's a security that you have as a character actor. Like, you can fill these roles, but he breaks down for us in this interview, like, but that does fade away. Even when you get older, I've played roles that I shouldn't have been playing because I was much younger, but I always looked older because I'm balding and I just have this look. But I'm reaching that time in life where even those type of roles aren't being granted to me. Those type of things are going away. And what I'm looking like, what I am now, there's just less characters to play like that. There's just less opportunities. And my passion for acting hasn't faded. So it's a real thing to just really contend with. And that's something we take for granted as viewers. But when you actually think about it and you really look into these things, I mean, that must be really tough for actors, especially ones like him where he plays certain type of roles when we're talking about film and television, and those dry up as you get older sometimes as well. Some character actors are lucky where it's like they get older, the more work they get. But this guy, it seems like it kind of faded away, and he just has given up the craft when it comes to film and TV, and he's just focusing on theater, where he has his theater groups that he likes. He's a part of the stable of actors, and so, hey, will you want to be doing a Shakespeare production? Of course I do. So off you go. I've watched some YouTube videos of him right up until like within the last 5 years of some theater company where their whole entire little video is of him doing a thing. He does a lot of music as well. And one of his first roles on IMDb was him as a singer in something, and that really got me curious.
You mean like musicals?
Yeah, like music in general. So, for instance, there was a production he was doing that wasn't a musical. It was a music production of like freestyle jazz thing, and it's him doing the narration over it. So he's reading these words, but
like rhythmically?
Rhythmically.
Okay.
And it's him, and he sounds like the interrogator doing it. Like, it's very precise and very like clockwork rhythm to it. And I would not have guessed that he would be someone who would be capable of doing that. Like, when you think of these theater actors, I think of, say, John Vickery, for instance, where it's like, of course that guy, like the guy who did Naroon, of course he did Scar, or of course he's done Shakespeare. But when I look at this guy, I did not think at all, oh yeah, there'll be some musical stuff in his background, like, especially of that variety. So that was just really exhilarating to just pick up upon. Like, this is a guy that's still out there working. He's just done a play where, no joke, the play has Oscar-winning actor Mark Rylance in it, and all of the reviews were like 3 stars out of 5 or 2 out of 5, and all of them were like, Mark Rylance was fine. You know who was really great, though? This Ray Burke guy. I read this thing where it's like, he played this grandpa character, and he was great. He had this whole monologue about how you get so old, you don't even know if your pants are zipped up anymore, and I want to see this performance. I'm like, oh wow, can you dream of that? Just some character actor who's been in the biz for ages. You're acting opposite of a fucking movie star right now. Somebody who's also known for being a great stage actor, and everyone's like, that guy, but that other guy, that Ray Burke guy, that's the guy to keep an eye on. That's great.
I have one more thing that I would like to share because I thought that this would be a nice button to the spotlight, which is the last question in the article that I was talking about is, what's your motto? And his answer was, I try to stay open to what's coming and not look too much to the future or too much to the past.
Down a hot and dusty road tramps a soldier with his load. 10 days leave he has to spend. Will his journey never end? Marching home, marching on his way, marching all the day. Soon he will be home to stay.
On our scale of yum being bad and yum being good, we do not do half yums. No, oh, this is good-ish, or this is bad-ish.
This is ya.
No yum and a half, a yamaha. We only accept good or bad. We're very binary in that way. I'm so sorry if that offends you, that we give episodes that you think are good a yum, but we're here to determine if intersections in real time is yum or yum for us. For me, it's clearly a yum.
Yum yum.
For me, this is yummiest.
Yum for me. Yum.
Wow, you hate it that much? 2 yums?
Bartek, you're like the 5th person to make that joke, and the other four were me.
Fine. Then I'll say something new. New section, guys. Gossiping hens. We're talking about Sheridan again. There's something in this episode that I noticed when I first watched the show, like, oh, a change in this episode carries through to the rest of the show.
The facial hair.
The facial hair.
Yeah,
it's like he transforms in this episode and like kind of keeps it up for the rest of the show. So is this, because you've seen the show more, the beginning of this episode, is this the last time we see him clean shaven?
Yeah. Oh, no.
No?
I think he's clean shaven in the season 4 finale. Actually, great question. I think he may actually keep the facial.
Because I think that was like something I noticed when I was watching. Like, wow, that experience, like he changed and like he kept the facial hair.
But he made it a goatee, which is like the worst part of the whole story.
Well, yeah, he does restyle it, but like he's always got facial hair after this episode.
Thank you, this episode, for allowing that to happen. Because, I mean, not the goatee, though. I like him when he has just a beard. He looks good with just a beard. I don't like the goatee.
In season 5, I kind of remember, because the whole war thing's over and this is kind of like new season, kind of like, different characters are in the spotlight, so you got like a bit more of an ensemble thing going on. He's still the main character, but like less so. Like the facial hair kind of almost builds up this like, oh, president character. He's like busy, so you don't see him as much. So it almost feels, poignant that like he changes physically in that way as well.
That is fair. And he doesn't have to wear a uniform anymore. Like of any kind. He just wears business clothes. So I have the description for the next episode of Babylon 5.
On the next Babylon 5.
The DVD breaks this down as such. We will be talking about episode 19 of season 4, Between the Darkness and the Light. And it is stated as such: outnumbered but not outfought. Ivanova defies the odds, leading a smaller fleet against a waiting Earth Force armada. A rescue force led by Garibaldi uses wit and brawn to rescue Sheridan. I love that. No, meanwhile. No, I'm kidding. It's all about wit and brawn on Babylon 5. Bartek, thank you so much for coming back on and joining us yet again to talk about this series. It's been so great to have this recurring thing of each season. We find the interrogation episode, and it ain't over. We got another season left. So what will it be, guys? You'll have to wait and find out. Isn't that right, Rachel? They have to wait. Episode by episode, joining us week to week. Heck, they can even follow us on our social media platforms and see maybe we'll make a hint of what the future interrogation episode is. But you'll have to follow us under YumYumPod or YumYumPodcast. Bartek, where can people find our other podcasts, our show together that we do?
Thanks. Because, first you were thanking me, and then I didn't get a chance to say thanks, and then you kept talking, so I had to
I didn't realize you had to thank me for coming on.
Well, you thanked me, so I had to thank you back for having me on, and then you asked a question. It's like, I have to thank you first. It's the order.
Where can people hear more of our witty banter like this?
Our witty banter and brawn can be found on the internet. Just look up Spit and Polish Presents. We're on the YouTube. We're on Podbean. We're on Apple Podcasts.
Yeah, you got it.
Google thingy.
Google Podcasts.
Spotify. iHeart Emoji Radio. It's really all sorts of places where we've spread the web quite far. There's even a random Spanish one. We're also on Twitter. Spit and Polish Presents is the name. We have the email spitandpolished@gmail.com. Check out our other podcast. We not too long ago did an episode on a film called Enough Said where Rachel was our guest. So if you want to hear the three of us doing our thing together, you can listen to that as well.
Oh, that was a very enjoyable movie to discuss on there. So if you want to hear us talk about movies, come on over to Spit and Polish Presents. And yes, there are times where B5 actors have come on and I've pointed going, that's that person. And Bartek at that time would just shrug and go, I don't know who that is. I can't recollect if we've had Babylon 5 actors on again since you've consumed B5, like major ones. Maybe like little character actors here and there, but I'm not thinking we have since you've watched it. We had a movie called A Gnome Named Gnome that had Claudia Christian in it. I was like, this is Ivanova, by the way.
Yeah.
Now, Rachel, could you wrap us out? Could you tell everyone where they can contact us and about all of this bonus content we're making?
They can find us, the YumYumPodcast, on various social medias under YumYumPod or YumYumPodcast. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, TikTok, YouTube. If you want to find extra content, then you better head over to our Patreon, where we have a few different ongoing shows over there. We're going through The Expanse. We've just finished up the Alien movies.
We watched Prometheus, Bartek. The only alien movie you've ever seen. Prometheus.
You guys are on TikTok?
That's the crime he feels.
Yeah. And giving our thoughts on various pieces of media.
Oh, we've given thoughts on things like Twin Peaks we recently gave some thoughts on as well.
And a separate episode on Fire Walk With Me.
There was a fun thing. That actor, that's Ray Burke's acting colleague, he was in several episodes of Twin Peaks, and I wanted to know who this character of Jared was. Answer, recurring minor character in the Invitation to Love segments on Twin Peaks.
Oh, the soap opera in the first season.
Yeah.
Right.
I love that. I love that. And if that's a bit too impersonal, you can directly contact us via email at yumyumpod@gmail.com.
That is it. Until next time, everyone, remember that Jakar did not show up here.
No.
But if he did, if he opened that door...
If he had that sandwich...
he would have banged his chest and said, "Good eating to you, Sheridan," and then he would have taken the sandwich away. And it would have been fun because he's an alien and he's already got a tracking device in his belly.
What do you mean this has mustard?
Oh, God.
It's got toxins as well, Mr. G-Car.
I'm fine. I have gills.
Here's a pouch. He can put the sandwich in his little pouch.
So he's a fish kangaroo.